had a key role in the development of climate change back at DOE when they drafted and negotiated the first bilateral climate change agreements in Costa Rica in 1994. Please join me in welcoming Aimee Christensen.
Thank you so much. We're really excited to be here. This is going to be a bit of a more conversational panel discussion with these incredible leaders. I think yesterday, Kate really sparked so much strategic thinking about Idaho's risks, but also those opportunities, and what's at risk if we don't latch onto those new global drivers that are really shifting the reality in which Idaho sits. I thought of, wow, Idaho could be the world's supply chain. We're cleaner, we're cooler. How are we going to make ourselves even cleaner? We have, of course, our incredible agriculture areas. So how can we be the carbon sinks of the world, which the Nez Perce tribe actually has been doing carbon forest projects for years, selling into global carbon markets. And then, of course, the renewable energy opportunity here with our vast solar and wind, which right now we've got some regulatory constraints. How do we overcome those, modernize our grid, and really scale up and start selling power to the Northwest instead of drawing it in? So let's sell it over there to the guys in BPA down to California as we increasingly integrate those markets. So this panel, these are the innovators, the entrepreneurs, the investors who are going to help us make this transformation and take advantage of the shifts that we're seeing around the world. First, we have Aimee Lientz. Aimee's the Director of Partnerships, Engagement, and Technology Deployment at Idaho National Laboratory. She's responsible for an incredible list of things: technology deployment, university and industry partnerships, workforce and economic development, regional affairs, communications, governmental affairs, and policy. She leads teams in Idaho Falls, Washington, D.C., and Boise. She has helped lead INL's transformation to a multi-purpose laboratory. I think all of us, I've certainly myself, previous to getting to really know the lab, thought of it as a nuclear lab, the nation's national security lab. And it's incredible. About a third of the lab is really dedicated to these innovative microgrid storage, renewable energy technologies, and testing those. So it's exciting to have a partner like INL in Idaho. She used to work at CH2M Hill, Northrop Grumman. And she's also on the board of Idaho Public Television, the Nature Conservancy of Idaho, Idaho Business and Education, and a number of others. So welcome, Aimee. We then have Scott Flynn, who's the owner and founder of Flynner Design and Build and IndieDwell. He combines his degree in chemical engineering with 25 years in construction in the built environment. As a real innovator, he's an advocate in educating both the public and private sectors on the tremendous value of high performance buildings and what they can bring to our communities. Then we have Leif Elgethun, known Leif for a few years because he does a fair amount of work up in Sun Valley in the solar sector, but more recently, given that he's a serial entrepreneur, there's always something new coming with Leif. And right now it's Retrolux, and it's really exciting that it's based here in Boise. This is a global company with real potential to scale and provide a critical solution for energy efficiency in the lighting space. He's past board chair of Idaho Clean Energy Association, the Idaho chapter of the U.S. Green Building Council. He's a board member and building committee chair of the Treasure Valley YMCA, again, among others. We have a very engaged set of panelists, which I really appreciate you guys giving your free time as well for those nonprofit boards. And then finally, Lisa Cooper. Lisa's the capital. So Lisa is an investor. She's a certified financial planner, chartered financial analyst. She has an MBA from the Wharton School. She worked at Smith Barney Asset Management, Trillium Asset Management. And after 20 years in this space, she's founded Figure 8 Investment Strategies. And she spent most of her career really working at that intersection of economics and social justice and how do we use capital markets for good. She provides advice and sustainable investment management for individual and institutional clients, and she's co-founder of Global Talent Idaho, a nonprofit program enabling skilled refugees and immigrants to reclaim professional careers in their new country. So please join me in welcoming our panel. Thank you guys for being here with us. And I'm just going to start off with a quick intro. As we move forward, I just wanted to give some context. So the vast majority of venture capital is going to entrepreneurs in 3 states, and they're not in Idaho. So Idaho entrepreneurs are competing globally for very rare capital. So how can we differentiate ourselves? I believe that social entrepreneurship and place, we have an incredible power of place, the assets I talked about earlier that can really set us apart. We also have companies that we heard from this morning like HP and Simplot and Cliff Bar who can buy from our innovators and entrepreneurs. So looking at what's relevant to this place as we continue to innovate and invest. There's all these drivers, as Kate talked about yesterday, and Lisa will talk about more today, around investment flows, going more to impact investment. You see massive amounts of dollars committing to impact investment, not just climate change, but other social impacts. And then you have the world, which Julia mentioned earlier, the Sustainable Development Goals. The world is organizing around solving these global challenges. You can look and see which governments, which countries are prioritizing which topics. So freshwater, oceans, clean energy, those are investment and innovation and entrepreneurship opportunities based upon what those governments are prioritizing. And we have an uncompetitive advantage here in Idaho because of some of the assets that we talked about earlier, and including in the food and ag and energy spaces in particular, and the built environment as well. Because we are cooler, people are going to be coming here, so we're going to need to grow and innovate in our built environment. So I think resilience that we've been talking about last 2 days is such a powerful driver for what we're working to build. And people are working on it all over the world because of the impacts of climate change that we talked about. And then they're looking at these risks. What are these climate risks for their investment portfolios? How do they change what they're investing in? The governor of the Bank of England has said basically 1/5 to 1/3 of fossil fuel assets can't be burned if we're going to stay safe. Those assets are on ExxonMobil's balance sheets. Yesterday, Norway, the largest wealth manager in the world, announced they are planning to divest entirely from oil and gas. So that includes billions of dollars of ExxonMobil and other oil company stock. And all of it, so you actually saw the oil market shift yesterday as a result of that announcement. So these are global drivers like Kate was talking about yesterday. This is happening in real time, and divestment is happening by some of the biggest players around the world. Coal took 82 years to develop its peak value. In 7.5 years, it's lost 97% of its value. So investors in coal, they didn't get out soon enough, we're in trouble. And these are just some of the folks who are now putting capital into the good stuff. So $100 billion by GMO, one of the largest wealth managers. And there's these massive opportunities that we've talked about. That's solar prices dropping down into the range with natural gas and oil, and that's how quickly it's happened. Again, solar growth projections by Bloomberg, investment. And then there's this 100% renewable energy commitment, which for me in Idaho, this is really important to know. These companies are saying, we want to be where we can have 100% renewable energy, and they can't do that in Idaho. And so Microsoft, for instance, they're building data centers in Wyoming where they can get 100% wind. So we need to be thinking about where can we position ourselves for the future and make sure that we can attract these major players, because it's a strategic asset for us that can create a lot of jobs. So Wyoming has really been positioning themselves for that. And we have the potential here. This is just a report card on our lack of climate risk, D+. And I just wanted to make a note, in Sun Valley, we've been looking at this. You may not know this, but 40% of our populace is on some form of public assistance. We had the second biggest fire in the country several years ago that really woke us up. And so we've really looked at all of our risks: isolation, high desert ecosystem, inequality, concentrated economy, focused on recreation and tourism. And climate change is our threat multiplier for our economy there. This is the Beaver Creek fire, 100,000 acres. And it cost us $40 million off of our economy right in that moment. And that really woke us up to our vulnerability. So we've been doing a real strategic look, which in Idaho, I think that's what we're starting here today. What are our risks? What are opportunities? And for us, water, food, we're the 5th most expensive county in the nation for food. We have massive agricultural land in our county. Why aren't we growing food and reducing those food prices? Instead, we're exporting our food. Energy as well. And so we've really been looking at how we can tap into these assets. We have 10% less than Texas in solar potential. Let's go. So with that, I'll just say the final risk for us is competition. We're lagging as a ski resort in environmental leadership, starting to catch up, starting to do some good things, but we really need to get ahead of it. And we've been working with our community to drive solar adoption through various programs. And these are some of our partners, including those at the table. So with that, I just wanted to wrap with just one example of an innovator in salmon I think it's really exciting what's happening with innovation and how we can create new business opportunities. Who knew that salmon were an actually innovative technology and investment opportunity in our markets? And these are just some of the potential new tools that we can bring to our markets, like a forest resilience bond. All right. And finally, carbon removal, which I mentioned, is a real opportunity in our land and forest assets, and we need all of us to be part of this. Larry Page, I'll give you a final quote from him. He was founder of Google, and he went to the AAAS and he said to all you engineers, we need you to help us solve these challenges, so join us. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to Aimee Lientz. So Aimee, as we think about these risks and opportunities facing our communities, our state, Idaho National Lab is this, Eastern Idaho, massive presence in land and resources. How can we partner with you? What are you all doing to help us become more resilient and take advantage of these opportunities?
Thanks, Aimee. Idaho National Laboratory, we have two opportunities here. And I had a couple slides here. I'm happy to show a few of those. Idaho National Laboratory manages the research and the development side for the Department of Energy. There's 14 states that have national labs, and Idaho is one of those. So we're very fortunate, I think, in Idaho to have a national lab where many of you can actually partner with us, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. So we manage 890 square miles. So this gives us a playground to do a lot of research and development, but it also means that we have to manage it like a county, a large county. We have our own transmission grid. We run a bus fleet. We manage natural resources. We have to deal with water and wastewater issues. So those are all incredibly important parts of us having corporate responsibility and to look at sustainability in our own way of how we manage and operate the Idaho National Laboratory. So let me flash over here. In case you don't know where we're at, we're between Arco and Idaho Falls. And so that gives you a little bit of a map to show exactly where our location is. It's in the high desert plain. And again, it's 890 square miles, and it's got a lot of little facilities spread throughout those 890 square miles. So we want to walk the walk and talk the talk. So we try to set some goals in sustainability. We set goals with the types of fuels we use with those 100 buses that we drive our people back and forth to. And we try to reduce, of course, any emissions from our vehicles that are on the road. We also look at opportunities to employ really good energy efficient practices, such as testing out water efficiency applications and making sure that we are building buildings under LEED certification. We just completed probably the largest LEED platinum facility in Idaho, which is a laboratory. And then we're planning on building 2 other large facilities. So we, again, want to walk the walk and talk the talk in terms of our goals. So we look for opportunities where many of you might subcontract to us. You might have some ideas that we can actually subcontract to you because of some energy efficiency idea that you have that we can purchase from you. But in addition to that, this just gives you an idea of the types of goals that we've set to reduce our transportation emissions that we have. We also are an R&D center. So we do a lot of research and development, as Aimee mentioned, in nuclear energy R&D. And for those of you in the audience who aren't aware, nuclear is the largest baseload carbon emission type of energy that's out there. So you have to take that seriously when you're talking about climate change. And that's why many other countries are also looking at advanced reactors. And we play a part in that research and development, whether it is with small modular reactors that you'll hear more and more about, but it's also something that we are looking for other advanced reactor forms. TerraPower is a Bill Gates company that is actually looking at deploying an advanced reactor across the world, and they are a partner of ours. They actually do a lot of research and development at Idaho National Laboratory with us. We do a lot of work with the Navy. Our roots started with the nuclear Navy, and our research and development for the Navy continues. And our missions to Mars and to the New Horizons missions, that's all fueled by nuclear energy. And the great thing about that is Idaho National Laboratory plays a large part in that type of research and development. But in addition to the work that we do in nuclear energy research, we also, as Aimee mentioned, do a lot in renewable energy. We have large laboratories that do work in battery testing, electric vehicle testing. In fact, we partnered with Aimee on a project in Blaine County. We also do work in biofuels and bioenergy. So these are some incredibly important types of research that we do as we talk about climate change and talk about carbon emission reductions. So those are the types of research that we do, and we look at opportunities to partner with whether it's proposals, whether it is looking at grants for entrepreneurs that want to test out their technologies at Idaho National Laboratory. We welcome them to come in and work with us, and we can talk a little bit more about that as we go on for the rest of today.
Great.
So,
thanks, Aimee. Scott, so you're really building out the business case for social entrepreneurship, social impact leadership in the built environment. Can you share with us what you've been up to and why, and how you think others maybe can learn from what you're doing?
Yes, thank you. So, as Aimee said, I am the founder and owner of two companies. Both companies are corporate social and environmental responsibility companies that build residential dwellings. And I want to repeat how I just introduced my companies. We're not residential builders and then corporate responsibility company. The company comes before the product. And that's how we would like everybody to think about when they're building a business or restructuring their business and how they message this responsibility to the public and their employees. So I have two companies, Flynner Homes Design and Build. Most of you might be most familiar with that company. We've been around for about 14 years. And in about 2010, we started to become 100% certified Energy Star builders. And then the market started to crumble, and the general public started losing trust in the building community and the system in general. So we stepped it up a notch from there. We made a commitment to be 100% certified green builders and to become double Energy Star with efficiency. And as we know, efficiency relates directly to emissions. The more efficient you are, the less emissions you have. So that kept us alive through the downturn. And then in about 2011, 2012, we decided to step it up a notch one more. Through our research and development, we made a call to be 3 times Energy Star, and that is our base package. So we put a stake in the ground saying, if you don't want to have your house to be this efficient, then you need to find another builder. And with that came, we showed through our clients giving data back to us that there is about for about 1.5% to 2% of the cost of construction, there's about a 4-year payback period and a 25% ROI. So we're not just doing it to do it. It actually works financially, and it does a good thing. So that's Flynner Homes' product. Now let's talk about the company. In just last year, we became the world's first certified B Corporation for custom design and build in the world. And Thank you. B Corps is a very rigorous certification process to prove your claims. It is actually the top shelf of claim certification. They go through every aspect of your company, and you have to prove all along that you are doing what you say that you're doing, not just with your product, but with your employees and your supply chains and all throughout. And then just this year, we became Goodwill certified, which Goodwill was created by Pete Gombert, a local Boisean, who traveled the world and realized that business can promote good. And Goodwill focuses primarily on the employees of your company. There's an 11 unit certification process where you have to meet everything with like equal wage, gender equality. The CEO can't make more than 100 times the average wage of their employees, and you'd be surprised how many CEOs will balk at that. So that's Flynner Homes in a nutshell. We want to prove through certification that we are doing what we say we're doing. IndieDwell is our other company, and we're just launching it this year. IndieDwell has the same mindset as Flynner Homes, except what we want to do is create a product that the mass majority of the community can afford, especially the bottom 25% of all income earners. That's we want to target that market. Thank you. So IndieDwell is Goodwill certified. It is in process of B Corp certification. And the difference between IndieDwell and Flynner Homes is Flynner Homes is incorporated as an LLC. IndieDwell is incorporated as a public benefit corporation. Now we're all familiar with S Corp, C Corps, and all that. Well, you can become a B corporation, and which means that at the end of the year, you have to demonstrate that you've made an effort in your company to towards the triple bottom line, I guess would be the easiest thing to say. So where's this demand coming from? So why are we seeing B Corps and certifications like this? It's my take that we're tired of the status quo. The status quo is broken, and we need a change. And the most frustrating piece about it is we really don't need to create anything new. We don't really need any new technology, any new building science, or anything along those lines. It's all here right now, and it's been proven to work. We just need to employ it. And that's where the frustration comes in, because we can be carbon neutral, net zero energy, and all those cool terms right now. Proof that corporate responsibility is working. I mean, it's harder for me to prove to you. So let's go to, using my two companies. So let's go to some bigger companies. So Forbes a couple weeks ago posted an article entitled "Is Doing Good for Business?" And it was commissioned by Verizon and Campbell's Soup, and they hired a third-party company to dig in and see if this stuff is for real. And what came out of it is just every single aspect of your indicator of economics was positive. And so, again, the proof is here. And I know there's some remarkable companies here today. I mean, Cliff Bar, wow, amazing. I want IndieDwell to be like that, right? I would just challenge them to get it certified. So my take on it would be, if you're an employee, you rise up from below and start asking questions. And if you're a leader, you start seeing the value and bring it down from the top. So thank you.
Thanks, Scott. So Leif, you've always really seen those global trends and then innovate a new company. Can you tell us about the global drivers for creating Retrolux and what you're seeing in the market and the benefits of your leadership in some of these climate solutions, please?
Yeah, definitely. Does this thing work? Yeah. So I want to kind of focus my talk not so much on Retrolux. I'll definitely share what we're doing with Retrolux, but I want to talk about how businesses in Idaho can start and innovate and do so in a framework that really maximizes their potential for success, both here at home, but also the ability to potentially export that talent to solve problems across the country as well as the world. So when I think about Idaho and where the good places to innovate are, you should start with what type of talent and what type of companies we already have here. The panel right before this, we had Cliff Bar, we had Simplot. Obviously, ag and food is really big here. We didn't have Albertsons, we didn't have Winco. They're also innovating. They're also here doing global leadership efforts. The second sector that I see a lot of opportunity in is energy. We have INL leading the front on the research side of things. Idaho Power is definitely a leader in renewable energy and energy efficiency. I believe they're the largest privately owned hydropower operator in the country. So a ton of opportunity for them to lead in storage. You have a lot of solar companies that are starting to exist here in Idaho, not only doing rooftop solar, but also a company named Flynner that most people probably aren't familiar with, which is one of the largest solar developers in the country. And they're here in Boise, Idaho, doing projects all over the country, and I think starting to look international. The third sector that I think is ripe for opportunity is the tech sector. We have HP with a major campus here, as well as Micron. And so then that doesn't even include the software companies and other tech companies like Cradlepoint and White Cloud Analytics and Clearwater and T-Sheets that are starting to exist. So those three sectors are where Idaho has the most strength, and where I think our universities are starting to put more and more of their resources into providing the right type of future leaders and future employees for those sectors as well. So within those three sectors, I wanted to share just some success stories to get your brains thinking about and inspire you to the type of innovation that's happening today. So I'll start with mine just to give you just to get that out of the way. So my current two companies, one is called Bluebird Solar and Light. We are capitalizing on the opportunity to turn the sun into power. And we do rooftop solar installations, both here in Boise as well as in Sun Valley and the Twin Falls area. Lots of opportunity to help individual homeowners as well as businesses, and we're also helping farmers grow a new type of crop, which is electricity. The second company I have is Retrolux, and that business really sprung out of the work I did installing and specifying energy efficient lighting product about 8 years ago. We developed a software tool that helped our company do that process a little bit easier, and now we're selling that software tool to companies all across the country and internationally in Canada. Got a call from somebody in Spain and Australia recently. So the need is national, and we're building it right here in Idaho. What that software tool does is it just makes it easier to sell and install lighting product. We're now seeing innovation in that industry pushing into smart building technology on the commercial scale, as well as IoT. So our company that was a lighting company is now going to be a smart building company and an IoT company. So we're seeing these big macro national trends, and we're attacking them to be at the forefront of ensuring that that promise is met. What I get really excited about IoT and smart building technology.
IoT, just acronym.
IoT is Internet of Things. So everything that's connected to the internet. And what's really cool about IoT and smart building technologies is not only are we now able to save energy, but we're able to improve productivity of workers, improve the amount of time that decrease the amount of time that they may have to take sick days. So improving on this circadian rhythm, according to a recent study by CBRE, which is a large property management company, resulted in an 18% increase in productivity and a significant drop in employee absenteeism from health issues. So light has an opportunity to improve our quality of life. Really awesome. So I'm going to talk about a few other companies that I think are really innovative. In the ag sector, there's a company that is focusing on reducing pesticide use. So instead of having a big bar or a plane fly over and drop pesticides on a field, they've developed this little dome that goes right over the top of the plants and applies the pesticide directly. And so whether that's a biological pesticide or a synthetic pesticide, they're able to reduce the amount of pesticide usage by 50%. That's really cool. Another company I just found out about has figured out how to do bee storage in a way that drops the amount of bees that die during their dormant years in the middle of winter by from 50% to only about 5 to 10%. So for the bee problem that we're seeing, a company right here in Idaho is innovating on how we keep bees alive through their dormant period in the winter. Really cool innovations in agriculture. Also speaking to agriculture, the company that designed HP's campus that is super water efficient right here in Boise, Idaho, now they're exporting that talent and that skill set across the country. So another really awesome local innovative company in the ag sector, so to speak. On the energy side, I spoke about Flynner and what they're doing. There's also U.S. Geothermal, which is one of the largest private geothermal companies based here in Idaho as well. And on the tech side, what we're seeing is companies that are really innovating to, I think, more on the social side. So most of the companies here locally that on the tech side are doing things like becoming Goodwill certified. They're doing things like looking at being a B Corp. And they're really living the talk, and they're really focusing on their employees and social responsibility. And so the opportunities, I think, in Idaho for business to not only do things here locally exist, and I think we should focus on those sectors of energy, agricultural, and tech to really maximize the homegrown talent that we have here in Idaho.
Thanks, Leif. So, yeah. Lisa, the investment, the trends that are shifting in the investment arena are really exciting. Share with us, as an impact investor, what are you seeing and how quickly are things shifting? Where are the opportunities and risks? Thanks.
Yeah, thanks. Great, awesome. Thanks. Thank you. So one of our great resources in Idaho is Aimee Christensen. I don't know how many of you have heard her speak before and been to the conferences she convenes in Sun Valley, but you know, I've been to a lot of conferences on sustainable and impact investing, and what we talk about in 3 days, Aimee can do in about 3 minutes.
Thank you, Lisa.
So I'm going to try to.
Sorry.
I'm going to try to just give a little more color to that, and basically say that from an investment perspective, it's really important to know that investors are now watching, and that is a huge shift. Investors across the country, around the world, are looking at what you've been hearing on these last two panels from bigger companies, from smaller companies. And, you know, when I started in this business almost 25 years ago, the, you know, sort of powers that be, the fiduciary standard said, when you invest your client's capital, you must prioritize financial issues. And in fact, you shouldn't look at anything non-financial. And that has completely flipped on its head. Now, the fiduciary standard across the world basically says, if you're not looking at environmental and social factors, you're not doing your job. So that's great. And it's caused, you know, created a lot more capital to flow in this direction, which is awesome. But there's also a lot of rhetoric, and I would say that we're early on in this field, and it's a disruptive and exciting time. And we investors like to think that we're really, really smart, so we've come up with all sorts of terms and acronyms to make us look really, really smart. Nobody else can understand what we're talking about, but there's a lot happening and moving, and not least of which is the kind of thing that Aimee was talking about with the Norwegian Sovereign Wealth Fund, the world's largest sovereign wealth fund, then announcing yesterday that it will be divesting, its intention to divest fully from oil and gas. So really interesting. So I'm going to take this term. Again, impact investing is growing so fast that we don't know quite what we call ourselves. So I'm going to use this more expansive term of sustainable, responsible, and impact investing, or SRI investing. Use that acronym. And basically, this comes down to a set of tools and strategies to incorporate environmental and social factors into how you make investment decisions. And again, that can, get fairly complex, but basically boils down to 4 strategies. The first one is that investors consider factors like what we've been hearing up here, particularly from companies like HP and Cliff Bar, around measuring and managing their carbon footprints and down their supply chains. Investors are looking at that to help them make better investment decisions. The companies that have smaller carbon footprints are subject to a lower carbon tax in that kind of environment. And if they're more energy efficient, they're creating less waste, wasting less money. That's a good thing. That's tool number 1, and that can be applied to a range of environmental and social factors. Tool number 2 is taking a piece of capital and directing it in a targeted way towards solutions, the kinds of things that we're hearing here, Flynner, IndieDwell, Retrolux, etc. And that often gets termed impact investing. It's growing very, very fast. And we can talk about the creative ways to do that across asset classes. The third tool is the flip side of that, and that is not investing in bad stuff. And a lot of the big institutional investors now, a lot of the big money coming into this space and doing this work says we don't want to do that. We want to focus on where we can create advantages or maybe avoid risks, but we're not going to do wholesale divestment from things like maybe tobacco, alcohol, and gambling. We might invest in the better tobacco company. And so there are a range of ways that that plays out, but I would say that that third tool is still very alive and well, particularly around fossil fuel divestment. And the fourth tool is being an active owner, particularly with public equity. So Kate Gordon talked yesterday about the pressure that companies are feeling and seeing from activist shareholders on climate issues, and that is very, very real and expanding. And whereas, again, when I started in, almost 25 years ago, we would see shareholder votes on environmental issues get 3 or 4% of the vote, and we go out and have a big party because that was success. This year, climate change resolution asking ExxonMobil to report on its climate change impacts got, I believe, 62% of the vote. That is huge. And your ETFs and mutual fund companies voted for that for the first time this year. And that is an enormous shift. Vanguard, BlackRock, iShares, if you own any of those funds, they've become activist investors on climate issues. So kind of cool. Oh, slides. So this is really super quick. Put it all together, and this is getting really big. So this is SRI in the U.S., and if you go all the way to the last 2 bars, that's 2014 and 2016. That's a 33% increase in assets invested with some form of SRI. Overall, that's $9 trillion, or 1 out of every $5 in under professional management in the U.S. You see the same thing if you look globally. This is the Principles for Responsible Investment is a set of principles that big institutional investors and some smaller investors sign on to, and $70 trillion globally. And climate change is certainly, we're calling it now, the mother of all environmental issues for investors. And you can see here that this is in the U.S., that between 2014 and 2016, the assets connected to doing climate change-related investing, a 4-time growth. And then talked about fossil fuel investing, nearly $6 trillion. That's without the Norwegian sovereign wealth fund, which is another $1 trillion, now has pledged to not invest in fossil fuels. That's huge. I do want to mention my company very quickly. Figure 8 Investment Strategies started just a year ago, and we are a social enterprise that is doing all of these forms of SRI in one way or another for a diverse group of clients, and we have a very intentionally diverse team. Be happy to talk with you folks about. Richard Nang, who's sitting right here taking pictures of me, is one of our analysts, and would be delighted to tell you more about the work that we're doing here. But basically, a part of our goal is to spur this kind of work across Idaho and from Idaho. So thanks.
Thanks, Lisa. We have some really great questions that have come in. The first one was one that was raised on the last panel as well, which is, what are your opportunities to engage and influence government officials on these issues? Share with them your technologies, what they mean, what they make possible here in Idaho and in your communities as far as making climate commitments. How are you helping share with them? Things are changing so fast. I find policymakers don't realize businesses want 100% renewable energy, that there are these technologies that we can do this. How do you guys engage with policymakers?
I'll start with that one. I'm the current board chair of the Idaho Clean Energy Association. It's a group formed to educate and bring awareness to the benefits of clean energy in Idaho, specifically formed to represent the interest of stakeholders that might be people that have put solar on their houses, or an energy efficiency lighting contractor, or a solar company, or just somebody who believes that clean energy is a solution to climate change issues. And while we don't publicly lobby the government, we definitely focus on educating stakeholders in the policy arena. So whether that's the Public Utilities Commission and educating them on the benefits of solar, not only to our grid, but also to the creation of jobs in the state of Idaho and the economic benefit that has locally for communities all across the state. Whether that's working with legislators to help them understand those same very issues. And so I think that we have to take an active role in bringing education and awareness to these issues to our policy leaders. And that particular organization focuses on it from a clean energy perspective, but I know there's also other organizations focusing on similar issues in water and land and so forth. So I think you absolutely, as a business owner, need to take an opportunity and take some of your time and resources to support these efforts and to make sure that the policy environment is right for these opportunities to grow and thrive.
I really like the title of this summit, Safeguarding Idaho's Economy, because that is really a door opener in Idaho. It isn't really a door opener when you tell legislators you want to talk about climate change, but it is a door opener when you want to talk to them about the economy. Mm-hmm. And we are very fortunate to have a great audience and a receptive audience when we talk to our elected officials about the importance of energy research and the impact that it can have on carbon emissions. And we bring them on tours of the Idaho National Laboratory. We meet with them in subcommittees. We partner with our economic development organizations, and we spend money with them to give grants and provide opportunities to those small businesses to enhance their own businesses. But the other part of this is education, and we find this is another opportunity to have a real door opener with our elected officials to really all the way from the K through 12 to higher education, and partnering with our educational institutions to talk about the importance of our changing climate and how technology plays a role in this, and how we need people in the future, and how we need to build more programs into all of our schools on science and engineering and the importance of that. And we get a receptive audience to that, and we'd love to see more opportunities in Idaho to enhance that.
Actually, Aimee, that was one of the other questions. Then I'll come to you, Scott, on this first question. I would definitely love to hear how you're engaging policymakers. But Aimee, there was a specific question about workforce in the STEM fields in Idaho and how Idaho is falling behind the removal of the climate change standards in our education guidelines. You know, how... It's a critical issue. Laughter over there. It's disappointing to say the least. And we are competitive. I just worked with an electric truck and bus company to locate their new 1,000 jobs headquarters in another state. We don't have the match for the workforce. So how do we change this? What is INL doing to help build that workforce?
Fortunately, Battelle, who operates Idaho National Laboratory, this is a core fundamental principle of our organization as a not-for-profit. And so we we are right there on the board with the STEM Action Center, which the governor launched. But then we're also providing a lot of teacher opportunities, encouraging the teachers to look at STEM, and we provide a lot of funding in terms of professional development with the teachers. But again, grants, and by the way, just a plug, go to inl.gov because there are grants right now for schools in the STEM programs that we encourage those to apply. But just really just immersing ourselves in the importance of this and bringing career pathway information into our rural schools. It's shocking when you go in these tiny little towns how many people and how many kids don't even understand what they're going to do in life, and allowing them to understand that pathway of opportunities that exist in Idaho in these types of fields. That goes a long ways to these small towns in Idaho and providing that information.
Thanks, Scott.
And here's where the message sours. Everybody in this room needs to hear this so that you understand where Idaho stands on residential home construction, especially in the energy efficiency sector. I've been in this area, in this arena, for almost a decade, and I have seen zero change. And that saddens me. Zero. I've gone every place they've offered me to speak, I speak. Every time the city wants to meet, I'll meet. I have been here for 10 years and there's zero change. I spoke to the chairman of the board of the Idaho State Building Code Council yesterday just to make sure what I'm about ready to say is true. Because he told me once, but I just, again, needed to check. So they're responsible for bringing to the governor they vote to see what codes are going to be passed in both residential and commercial. They passed the 2012 building codes. So let me even back up a minute. Where we are in the 2015 building codes right now. Okay, in a typical jurisdiction, we would be 2015. Every 3 years, the building codes change for theoretically the better. We're about ready to go into 2018. Do you know where Idaho is? 2009. We're 2 codes behind, almost ready to go into 3. And again, this is just on the residential side. The commercial side is progressing ahead. So this board brought to the governor that they passed the 2012. The governor turned around and said, you need to go rethink this. And so what happened to get anything passed, the board said, all right, we'll go back to the 2009 codes as long as we get the commercial codes passed to 2012. How are we going to change that? Who's the biggest driver of this? The builders themselves. So the BCA, the Building Contractors Association of Southwest Idaho, are one of the biggest lobbyists in this state and want nothing to do with what we in this room want. And they're a powerful force along with the legislature. So again, and even the 2009 codes that were passed have been butchered. They're not even full. So I guess I just want you to know what we're up against when it comes to residential energy efficiency. By 2030, everything was supposed to be net zero, but not on the track that we're going. We won't even be close. You know, California claims net zero energy by 2020. All new construction, residential. So you can see there's a huge disconnect here that I just wanted the thinkers in this room to be aware of, to see if there's any way we can start tackling that. So,
and that's a
thank you.
competitiveness issue. I mean, for Idaho, we're using far more energy to heat our homes or other buildings because our codes aren't to a higher standard. Why are we spending that extra money on energy in our economy? So that's an issue of leadership, right? It's an issue of working with the building trades to require that, and they can step up and meet those codes.
Yeah, well, the city of Boise wants it. I mean, they're one of the only supporters, of this. They have these huge, awesome goals by 2035 to be all of our energy comes from renewables.
Mm-hmm.
But if we keep building code houses, that 2035 goes to 2040, 2045.
I would just note that my Blaine County Commissioner out there tossed in a note that Blaine County is actually are higher than 2015, better efficiency than 2015. Thank you very much. And Blaine County.
There are 3 counties that I believe are at least 2012 or higher.
Hometown shout out. Okay, thank you. All right, so thank you. And doing a lot of energy efficiency grants, retrofits, et cetera. So there's some leadership here in Idaho and places, including on this stage. So Aimee, I have a question for you and a question for Lisa and more for Scott. So let me just start, Scott. There's a couple clarifying questions. Well, is there a demand for small homes in Idaho? What are the specific building products you focus on using? And the kind of calling out the differences between Flynner homes and IndieDwell. Really, what does that look like?
Yeah, I realized that I didn't really tell you what IndieDwell was. IndieDwell is a modular home company that uses recycled shipping containers to build healthy, energy efficient, extremely durable dwellings. And again, we're trying to tackle that lower 25% of all income earners by utilizing basically the same product you'd get in a high-end Flynner Homes house, but into lower square footage and deployable. Again, it's all about currently how the system is set up is you're putting the most vulnerable people in the junkiest houses possible, right? They're dilapidating, they're sick homes is a term you'd hear them called. And so, and they're forced to buy a product that actually depreciates because like a manufactured home comes with a license, and anything with a license depreciates, like your car. Modular home building actually it appreciates because it's on a foundation. It's real property.
Right.
Did I get it all in?
I think so. I've a couple of questions for Lisa now. One that's, I think, a really fundamental question, which is, do companies who are leading on the environment have lower profits relative to their capital investment, their value? So looking at kind of what are their trade-offs between environmental leadership and their investment value? Or does the environmental leadership actually create value? That was one. And then the second one is, how can individual investors see the ESG performance of the assets they hold, and what can the investment community do to make this information more visible and actionable to people? So,
okay, great. That's lots.
Yes.
I do. Let's see. I'll answer those. I also want to speak to Scott. Actually, I'm going to speak to Scott's thing first because I don't like that lack of hope. So about 5 years ago, I was in a meeting with a major investment bank, and we had a Russian steel company come in to talk with our group of analysts about how they were performing. But what they wanted to talk about was their carbon footprint. They came in with their Global Reporting Initiative reports and their CDP reports, and we went, "What? A Russian steel company?" Severstal. And they said, "Well, yeah, we're doing this." We said, "Well, why?" Because that's not what we normally see. And they said, because Ford's making us. And why is Ford making them? Well, Ford's investors were demanding metrics all the way down their supply chain. Whether or not Idaho state officials get it, the capital markets are moving. So hope, yeah? Okay.
Yeah, good.
And I'm so glad that you asked. Oh, we don't have my slides anymore. I have a few little slides to show you. But basically, that question about SRI or ESG. ESG stands for environmental, social, and governance. That question about whether those investments perform well, at least in the publicly traded markets, that ship has sailed, which is great. We have 20 years of data, and what it shows us, it's sort of a derivation of that haiku. It's how do SRI investments perform compared to traditional investments? About the same, a little better. And maybe, if we go to, let's see if this works.
I'm not sure if I can, there we go. Yep.
That guy. Okay. So these are mutual funds that Morningstar rates. And I like this because it's very accessible by anybody who has funds, has mutual funds. And it's a nice star system, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So the funds listed on the right side or on the left side are 5 stars, on the right side are 1 star. So the 5 stars are better. The green line is SRI funds, and the gray line not. And what you can see if you add up the 3s, 4s, and 5s, those are funds that have done pretty well. 75% of them over Morningstar rates on a 10-year period of time, compared to 68% of conventional funds. That's good, competitive, maybe a little better, right? And what's really exciting is that analysts are getting a whole lot better at how we're using environmental and social data. So as we start to ask this question about a really core concept, materiality, it's great to look at the whole set of environmental and social issues and say every company should be doing everything really well. And that would be great. But the materiality question says, what is going to show up in earnings soon? For your industry, for the places in which you're operating. You can imagine all the metrics. There's an organization now called SASB, the Social Accountability Standards Board, which is a derivation of FASB, and Michael Bloomberg is behind this. And they're doing tremendous work on materiality. And so they've done some research to say, well, what if we went backwards and applied some of this materiality data? If we had made decisions based on that, what would that have looked like? That blue line is what it looks like over time, and that's maybe even a lot better. So can SRI investing be smarter investing? I think that's the question now, not, does it underperform? So what was the other question? Sorry.
Yeah, no, that was right. And then how does this become more transparent to individual investors so people know what they're investing in?
Well, I honestly think that Morningstar and other sort of reporting mechanisms have done a very good job on the financial reporting side. That's great. We don't do as well on the social impact side. And so I think that question is still open, but investors are demanding it, and companies are starting to deliver it. So there are, all of the S&P 500 companies now deliver sustainability reports that track in one way or another to better or worse extent their impact. So we're getting there.
Great. Well, we're going to have to wrap up, but I have one more question for Aimee, and then if each of you could think there's any last takeaway that you want to leave with the audience as we wrap up. Aimee, are you all studying advanced hydropower? Are there ways to continue to produce hydropower and protect our salmon and steelhead aquatic resources? Is there a solution to dams? And then there was a related question about how do we value cold, cool water, and that in Idaho it's so vital to our fisheries and also to companies who need cool water. So if anyone has any thoughts about that, I think that's a tough question. But Aimee, go ahead.
Idaho National Laboratory doesn't do a lot of work in hydropower, but what I will say what we do is we are doing a lot of projects in what we call hybrid energy systems or integrated energy systems. So think about your car that works on gas and battery, put that on a large scale and look at how all the energy systems and how they work together. And fortunately, because we have our own grid, we're in a great situation where we can test out a lot of different energy systems and play one on each other and make it as efficient as possible. So hydro, of course, plays into that with how it plays into wind and solar and nuclear, et cetera, and look at that as a system. I will say the Center of Advanced Energy Studies, which is the 3 universities, University of Wyoming and Idaho National Lab, does probably look more at the hydro opportunities there. And so just as my wrap up as we enter into that, I put out on the table over here against that wall, ways to do business with INL, and this is a great cheat sheet that talks about the grants and small business opportunities and subcontracting with us. And the proposals, I would say these days that we see are requiring us to have an industry partner. So I think that's a great trend because we don't like to do research just for research sake. We like to make it real. So if you are an entrepreneur or if you are a company that wants to innovate, now's a great opportunity to look at partnering with Idaho National Laboratory.
And so just say, Aimee, we've been partnering with Idaho National Lab on what we call a digital energy blueprint to really understand the Blaine County electricity infrastructure. Where are our critical loads like hospital, fire, and police? Where can we deploy solar and battery storage? And they're just an incredible asset. So just to reinforce having INL in our state is real value as we work to do the grid modernization that Kate was talking about. So next, Scott, closing.
I just want to wrap up by saying I would encourage you to get involved somehow. You know, as an employee, rise up, start asking questions. What's our impact as a company? What's our purpose? And then the leadership, I encourage you to, find this Forbes article that I mentioned and see that it actually does work. The great thing about the certification is, especially if your company is established, you're like, how do I know I'm doing the right thing? Well, these are just metrics. Like if you're meeting these certain things, these certain guidelines, then you might already be, halfway there, almost all the way there. That's what we found as a company. And so, especially like Goodwill, it's really easy. It's only 11 metrics and it's a yes and no. So again, I would encourage you to engage. Thank you.
So whenever there's risk and whenever there's challenges, there's opportunities. And I think Idaho has a lot of unique resources to tackle some of the problems that not only face our state, but the nation. So I would challenge everybody, whether you're an entrepreneur at a large established company, an entrepreneur, an employee, when you see challenges that help us make a difference, go ahead and take advantage of those and go after them. And so I definitely encourage you to do that. And if you have anything that you can do in the clean energy world or ideas that you think we can use to move that industry forward, definitely come find me afterwards. I'd love to hear about it. Thanks.
In the last year or so, I've been in a number of rooms like this filled with investment professionals. And when someone's brought up the idea of SRI or climate change related investing, the general response has been, that's a bunch of hooey. It's a marketing scam, doesn't really work, it underperforms. That's the level of a lot of the discourse in the financial community here, for better or for worse. What we've been talking about here, or this last day and a half, can be a much louder message. And so I'm just so excited about this conference, and I hope that there are more convenings like this with this message. It's got to be louder.
Thanks, Lisa. That's a great way to wrap this panel up. We're a little bit over, but there were two questions we didn't get to that I thought we should just take away and think about working on. One of them was about what state policies are helping or hindering innovation. So thinking at that state level, what can we all be doing to engage our state leaders on innovation and why it's important for Idaho? And then also the recent school bond that was passed and the redesign opportunity of 12 major schools. So really, how do we start, as Kate said yesterday, capital stock turnover moments. We're rebuilding those schools anyway. Let's innovate and make them resilient and lead in this space. So with that, please join me in thanking our incredible panel. Thank you.
Thank you. Amber, you're next. A note about Deb. Okay, great. So thank you. What a great panel. I'd like to invite Amber Beeg back to the stage, and she's going to tell you about what's next for us, the lunches and the breakout session. So thanks for your attention.
Thank you. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Boise State Public Radio, for being here. It is fantastic to have you as an MC, so thank you. wow, I'm really, really inspired. So I want to just, again, thank all the panelists and thank you for the moderators. You have done an amazing job. And I think all of us here are incredibly inspired to look at these solutions and see them scale. All of the presentations will be available via our website. So we will be posting that in the next couple of days. So keep an eye out for those presentations if you'd like to review them. We'll also be posting the video on our website. It'll take a couple days for us to get the edits up and running. So keep your eye out for the video. This event happens because of all the people who came here together, everyone who participated, and especially the facilitators. And I just want to acknowledge the facilitators. Beth, before you leave, I want the facilitators to stand up if you're still in the room. Some of them have already left to go and get ready for you. But I just wanted to acknowledge the facilitators before we head out. And later we'll also bring up the steering committee, but that's a big job, and they've been doing a tremendous job with this. So we will go into the second part of the facilitated sessions. What you can expect today is to dive deep into brainstorming solutions. And these solutions are hopefully the beginning, I would say the seeds of something. We are not going to be reducing our greenhouse gas footprint tomorrow. That is not going to happen. But these are seeds of ideas that may or may not have viability. And so let's not be attached to the solutions that we come up with, but let's look at them as seeds of ideas that maybe have applicability or viability. So we've heard this morning from some really great ideas. And as we go into lunch, we'll grab your lunch and you'll go to your breakout room. Go back to the same table. For those of you who are not here yesterday, that's okay. Join into a group that you're interested in. We'll start out the breakout sessions with solutions panels. So we have more conversation, half an hour of the panel discussions. Yesterday panels were excellent. Thank you, everyone. Those were so inspiring. And we'll go into those panels, discussions, and then we'll brainstorm the solutions. Bring your lunch with you. So take your lunch, eat it at your own leisure, and then we will regroup and reconvene back in here for sharing and hearing from the solutions and then closing remarks. Thank you, everyone, and I look forward to seeing how this emerges.
like find a slideshow. Oh, yeah. No, we don't want that.
Yeah. We need some of that. I do have to say that. Fine energy. Good morning. I am here for Idaho Safeguarding. Stop. Okay. Good morning. I'm here for Safeguarding Idaho's Economy in a Changing Climate Summit. And I'm here with 400 other Idahoans throughout the state. And we are all gathered together, businesses, industry, academics, tribes, citizens, talking about the fact that there are real Idaho solutions for both our communities and our state when it comes to Idaho's changing climate. What I'm hearing from people is an overwhelming desire to talk about this, to dialogue about it, to come up with solutions, and to move from action. So I look forward to talking with you more, and you'll be hearing more from us from these summits. Oh, that was bad. The part was terrible. Okay.